If you don't care about Crown Jewel, you probably didn't care about this show. Graham Giason Matthews back here with a review of Friday Night SmackDown for October 25th, 2019. Hope you guys are doing well. I have actually not done an audio review of SmackDown since actually the Fox debut 3 weeks ago. I've just been busy on the last couple of Saturdays. I don't think that this will be a regular thing every single week going forward. I'll only do it whenever I can. But I did want to talk about this show. It was far from a newsworthy show. It was far from a great show. I'll tell you that right now. But I did want to talk about it just because this show has some serious issues to address if it's going to stay on Fox. Fox reportedly, not even reportedly, they did pay billions of dollars for WWE to air their programming on their shows on Fox, FS1, through, I don't know, the next 5 years. But I can guarantee within the next year, this show will be bumped to FS1 full-time if they don't get their shit together. That first show on Fox, understandably so, and even this number was a bit disappointing to some people, did around 4 million viewers. I think some people were expecting closer to 6 million. I guess the last show to premiere on that Friday night slot on Fox did around 6 million viewers. WWE did 2/3 of that with 4 million. Okay, and that was with The Rock. That was with Brock Lesnar in action. That was with a ladder match pitting Kevin Owens versus Shane McMahon. We had a bunch of other big stars on that show. Hulk Hogan, Goldberg were all advertised to be there. Stone Cold Steve Austin, even though they never once appeared on the actual show, except in the audience. Nonetheless, it was a pretty big newsworthy show. Of course, the rating dropped to under 3 million, I want to say. Maybe not under 3 million, maybe around 3 million for that draft show the following week, which was a pretty big, drastic, drop from where they were the week before. And even then, that was a newsworthy show because it hosted the draft. So for them to drop 1 million viewers in 1 week, I don't care if it had the fucking Rock or not. That is a pretty big, disappointing drop. It absolutely is. Then you get to the third week. I forgot exactly what the numbers looked like for last week, but they weren't great, and the show wasn't great either. This show was no different. WWE, I understand, is completely in crown jewel promotion mode right now, and I understand why. The show's coming up on Thursday, but truth be told, it's a pay-per-view that no one could give two shits about. It's not all that exciting of an event. We have been conditioned to think, for the past year and a half now, that any event that emanates from Saudi Arabia will be fucking terrible. Super Showdown, Greatest Royal Rumble, Crown Jewel, whatever you want to call it, have all been abysmally atrocious. Every single one of them. Each one worse than the last, arguably. This one, based off what's on tap and based off the build we've seen so far for this show, I have very little faith that Crown Jewel 2019 will be any better than any of the other installments. I would love to be optimistic and think, hey, this could be a good pay-per-view. But based off what we've seen so far in the build-up to this pay-per-view on Raw and on SmackDown, I have zero reason to think that Crown Jewel will be any better than any of those other installments of these Saudi Arabia shows. Putting aside Crown Jewel for a second, this isn't about Crown Jewel. I did my predictions for the pay-per-view on Wrestle Rant Radio just this past week. The predictions are also available here on the channel if you want to check them out, isolated from the rest of the show. This episode of SmackDown was so bland. It was so dull. I could not think of one above average thing on this entire show, except for the main event. There was some good stuff, I will give you that, but overall, this is a far cry from what I'm sure Fox had paid for what they had in mind with SmackDown when they, bought it out a year or so ago, when they paid WWE all these, the billions upon billions of dollars to air the WWE programming on their network. This is not a $1 billion show. This is fucking a Mickey Mouse operation. With what we've seen so far on SmackDown in the last 3 weeks, these shows are progressively getting worse. That debut show on Fox, awesome as advertised, but just because they had The Rock, a WWE title match, the debut of Cain Velasquez, the following week, the draft, not great, but the draft stuff I thought was solid, at least for night one. The third week of SmackDown on Fox, it was already back to business as usual. And week 4 was no different. If anything, it was more mediocre than last week. Again, I understand they're in promotion mode right now for Crown Jewel. They really want to sell you on that show. They really want to make you care about Crown Jewel. But I just can't bring myself to care. There is nothing at that pay-per-view I can tell you right now that I am overly excited for in the slightest. Except for maybe Lesnar and Cain, but even that does not feel nearly as big as it should just because it was thrown together at the very last second. And they're really just relying on the history that those two had from the Octagon in the UFC 9 years ago. The fight actually happened 9 years ago from this past week. They're kind of relying on that history between Brock and Cain from the UFC to sell you on that match at Crown Jewel. And for me, at least, it's not working. We kicked off this episode of SmackDown with a Miz TV, and I said this on Twitter the other day, but I find it comical that Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair have now appeared on Miz TV twice in the past month, yet neither guy thought it was a good idea to recruit the Miz, to their team at Crown Jewel. Instead, the Miz is left looking on like, I guess he could be in that battle royal to crown a new #1 contender to the United States Championship. Oh, whoop-de-fucking-do. But I just thought it was funny that they've now dealt with Miz twice in the past month, including the announcement for this fucking match at Crown Jewel. That was when the announcement took place that Team Hogan was facing Team Flair at the pay-per-view. And again, neither guy thought to recruit the Miz. I feel like that kind of says a lot about the Miz's current standing right now, not only on SmackDown, but in the entire WWE. I like the fact that he was drafted to SmackDown, but he has done nothing. 4 months now. I know he went for the Intercontinental Championship at the Clash of Champions pay-per-view a few months ago, last month maybe. But beyond that, the guy's done next to nothing since he lost to Shane McMahon back at WrestleMania 35. And it's sad to see because he really was on a hot streak around this time a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Now he's been reduced to a glorified talk show host. And it's a role he plays well, but there's so much more there with The Miz than what we're getting at the moment. This segment was a complete fucking mess. I think Hulk Hogan at one point referred to Shinsuke Nakamura as Ichiban or some dumb stereotypical racist shit like that, and not the racist stuff that you would normally hear from Hulk Hogan. It was just a really dumb segment. It did serve to set up the night's 6-man tag team match, which was announced as Roman Reigns, Ali, and Chad Gable. I refuse to call him by that other name. And by the way, he did debut his new gear on this show, did Chad Gable, and it's completely ridiculous. It has to be seen to be believed. It looks so utterly ridiculous. I can't believe that WWE actually went through with giving him such stupid attire. He looks like he belongs in a junior high school basketball league. That's how ridiculous this guy looks with the shorts and the jersey or whatever the hell he's wearing now for a top. If the name wasn't stupid enough, the guy will be dead in the water within weeks wearing that stupid-ass gear. But anyway, we had Gable, Ali, and Reigns announced to be facing a little later on in the night on the show. Shinsuke Nakamura, King Corbin, and Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn said, I can't wrestle, so Cesaro is taking my place. Which I won't complain about because I like Cesaro being on TV. He did go undrafted in the 2019 WWE draft for like 5 days, which made absolutely no sense. So it was cool to see Cesaro in the main event, albeit only to take the pinfall loss. But what was wrong with Sami Zayn wrestling in that match instead? Why has the guy been out of the ring for months now? Unless he's injured, I don't understand why they could not have had the guy wrestle here. It's not like it was Crown Jewel and they had to pull him out of the pay-per-view. He was never advertised to begin with because I guess he's not allowed over there or he doesn't feel comfortable over there. I'm not exactly sure what the deal is, but Sami Zayn will not be there next Thursday on Halloween for Crown Jewel. And he hasn't been at any one of these shows, I don't think, for a while now. I don't think he was at... Was he at the last show? Not the last couple Saudi Arabia shows. He wasn't at Super Showdown. He wasn't at last year's Crown Jewel. I think he was hurt then anyway. I don't think... He may have been in... No, I don't think he was in the Greatest Royal Rumble. He may have been advertised. I don't remember. I don't think he was. But anyway, he very well could have wrestled on this show. For whatever reason, he didn't. Again, unless he's injured or something along those lines, he seems to be allergic to getting in the ring for whatever reason. That just didn't make much sense to me. So I don't know what the deal with that was. If they want to have Zayn serve as the mouthpiece for Nakamura, which I'm all for, to be honest with you. I think it's a pairing that works. That doesn't mean they can't have him wrestle occasionally. And he could have very well taken the pinfall loss in that tag team match and not been harmed at all because he doesn't wrestle anyway. It's not like The Miz, or rather, I'm looking at The Miz's name here in my SmackDown review on the website. It's not like Zayn would be any more damaged than he was previously. It's not like the guy's undefeated or some shit like that. Sami Zayn has not won a match on WWE TV since maybe May or June, so it wouldn't matter anyway, but I thought that was worth noting. We then got Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode versus the New Day's Kofi Kingston and Big E, and it should be noted too, Xavier Woods was hurt at during WWE's Australian tour recently, and he suffered an Achilles heel injury. So it looks like he's going to be out for a while. I have been told, there's been advancements with the recovery process and the surgery and stuff like that. Not with Xavier Woods specifically, but, in the time since someone last suffered that type of injury in WWE, which I don't know, would have been when? Years ago? I don't remember. I know Edge had that injury like 10 years ago. He suffered it also on a tour of, maybe not Australia, but it was at a house show or something like that. Got hurt, came back within 6 months, just because Edge was a freak. I mean, the guy got hurt a lot, like John Cena, but he would always be back ahead of schedule. Not to say Xavier Woods will be back in time for WrestleMania in 6 months. That would be best case scenario. My projection will be that he's going to be out for at least 9 months, if not a year. But it's not looking good right now. It sucks. I mean, Xavier, thankfully, his strong suit is on the mic. So I'm not sure exactly what the recovery process would look like for an injury like that. I mean, Edge was off TV for the full 6 months he was out for with that injury. I don't think Xavier Woods will be back within 6 months. Again, I could be wrong. But I think Xavier, unlike Edge, though, has real worth in a manager-esque role for the New Day while he's out. Again, I'm not sure how viable, how realistic that is, but just the thought I threw out there on Twitter earlier on Friday. But anyway, so we had Kingston and Big E taking on Roode and Ziggler on SmackDown. And the match was fine, but it was clearly just hype for the Crown Jewel Tag Team Turmoil match, where we will determine the best tag team in the world. Which is comical unless the tag teams from AEW will be involved. Otherwise, it's a complete fucking joke. Because no tag team in WWE can claim to be the best in the world. And that goes for the Revival, too. The Revival are great, but no better than the Young Bucks and especially the Lucha Bros, who are, I will say, till the day I die, at least, until it stops being true, I should specify. I will continue to say this for as long as possible, that the Lucha Bros are the best tag team in the entire world right now. No one can convince me otherwise. But anyway, speaking of the Revival, like I said before, or maybe I didn't mention this, but the Revival will defend the SmackDown Tag Team Championship against the New Day next week on the show, which is why it was all the more mind-boggling when the New Day lost here to Ziggler and Roode. It was a nothing match, again, only really existed to add build to the Tag Team Turmoil match next Thursday at Crown Jewel. That was the only reason why it happened, because we had Heavy Machinery come out afterward. We had the Revival come out afterward. How are we supposed to take the New Day as threats to the SmackDown Tag Team titles if they just lost here? And I will say this, I mean, it does appear they might be headed somewhere with this, Kofi Kingston. A lot of people picked up on this. I didn't. That Kofi, backstage during on SmackDown last week, during the altercation, the interaction they had with the Heavy Machinery, Kofi was seen, talking normally, but he was, with the pancake that he had in his hand, he was crushing it. Almost like he was frustrated over the fact that he hasn't really been the same since losing the WWE Championship a few weeks ago to Brock Lesnar. Something that was barely brought up, by the way, on the show the following week on SmackDown. But it seemed like he had a subtle reaction to it on SmackDown last week when he took the pancake and crushed it in his hand. This week, we saw something similar, not on TV. I mean, kind of, when Kofi lost, he was the one who got pinned, which isn't overly surprising because it was him and Big E. And they don't ordinarily have Big E be the one to get pinned. But with Kofi, he had this shocked look on his face when he lost the match. And then in a .com exclusive video after the show on the YouTube channel and on WWE.com, of course, Kofi was like, they were frustrated, both him and Big E. him and Big E both, but it was one of those type of reactions where it was like he was very frustrated with the fact that they've been losing a lot lately. Xavier Woods is hurt. He lost the WWE Championship. The New Day are no longer the SmackDown Tag Team Champions after what happened last month at Clash of Champions. They're hoping to get back on the right track next week when they face the Revival for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. But still, it was a really interesting reaction from the New Day, not one that we ordinarily see. He brought up how, we like to stay positive, but it's tough. It's tough when everything goes against you, when everything seems to be going against the grain, from losing the WWE title, losing Xavier Woods to injury, losing the SmackDown Tag Team titles. So keep an eye out for Kofi. Maybe Kofi and Big E both. Maybe they'll both turn heel. But a lot of people have pitched the idea maybe Kofi goes heel on his own. He goes dark for a little while. They can't really do that. It's not like Kofi can go away and New Day can continue to exist on its own with Xavier and Big E, which would not have been a bad idea, but with Xavier Woods out hurt right now, that's kind of not possible. But I am interested to see where they go with it. I don't think they win the belts back next week. They very well could, but I do think it'd be a waste. Like, why bother taking the championship off of them in the first place if they were just going to regain it a week later? I know they did that with Bayley and Charlotte a few weeks ago coming out of Hell in a Cell. I realize it has been done before recently, just as recently as Charlotte and Bayley, but that was different. I don't agree with that either, but they did it with Charlotte just to get her to number 10, her 10th SmackDown Women's Championship. The New Day have held a bunch of tag titles. They don't need another pointless reign anytime soon, so I would hope they don't regain the gold as soon as next Thursday. Anyway, we had Lacey Evans taking on a woman named Cameron Connors. I'm not sure what indie wrestler that was, but this was over rather quickly. The bell rang, or first Lacey ran down Cameron in the audience before the match. Bell rings. Lacey walks out, or at least it looks like she's walking out on Cameron. Cameron turns her back, starts celebrating what appears to be a 10-count victory because Lacey almost got counted out. She runs back in the ring before the 10 count is made. Cameron, apparently being the idiot that she is, gets blindsided from behind by Lacey. Lacey follows it up with her finisher, wins the match. Didn't overstay its welcome. I had no issue with this. I like Lacey. I thought the Becky Lynch feud over the Raw Women's Championship wasn't really what it could have been. The matches were no good. I mean, regardless of how far she's come in the past 6 months since she got called up to the main roster, I don't think there's any doubt that Lacey Evans was one of those premature call-ups. She should not have been called up when she was earlier this year. She made the most of it in the feud with Becky, but she was not ready. She was not ready because she's not that great yet in the ring, and she could have been better with more time in NXT. That being said, though, I am in favor of a renewed push for Lacey on SmackDown. She's on a different show now. It's better than her getting another push on Raw because we've already seen her lose to Becky, so that really would not have made much sense. But getting back on the right track on SmackDown, I am in favor of. I'm not sure how far it's going to go, just because our current SmackDown Women's Champion is a heel. So I don't see Bayley and Lacey Evans happening anytime soon. But I do like that they are focusing on newer faces. You know, Charlotte's gone. They have Sasha. They have Bayley. But who else is there in the SmackDown Women's division? They have Alexa Bliss, who we have not seen now since she got drafted to the show. Only Nikki Cross, interestingly enough. No Alexa. She might be hurt again. Who knows? Hopefully not. But, they have Mandy. They have Sonya. They have Carmella, who are all established to a certain extent. But, been there, done that. Even Lacey been there, done that. But at least on SmackDown, she is a fresher face. So I am interested to see where this goes. Although it wasn't overly exciting here. This squash match of sorts. We then had Drew Gulak shown in the ring without an entrance, and you had to know right then and there that this guy was not winning the match. Kalisto came out next, a man who has essentially implied publicly over Twitter that he cannot wait to become a free agent next year when his contract expires with World Wrestling Entertainment. That was the man that beat Drew Gulak here on this show. The match was completely forgettable. It was less about the match and more about Braun Strowman coming out and costing Gulak the victory before beating up on Gulak afterward. What a fucking waste. Why even bother putting the guy on SmackDown if all he was going to do was lose? This is what people like Heath Slater are for. To be quite honest with you, I would probably be even more content, or I would be I would be more fine with this type of treatment for another talent like an Apollo Crews. For as talented as Apollo is, I know he's a face, so it wouldn't really make much sense. But I would honestly be more fine with it, just because Apollo Crews at least has been a jobber for the better part of his main roster run for the last 3 years. Drew Gulak literally just lost the NXT Cruiserweight Championship fucking 2 weeks ago. And he's already been reduced to losing to Braun Strowman and Kalisto. It makes absolutely no sense. The man was on the roll of his career as the Cruiserweight Champion. I know 205 Live doesn't mean much anymore, not that it ever really did to begin with, but he had a great run over there, and he deserves credit for repackaging himself, reinventing himself, and having a great run and a great string of matches over in the Cruiserweight division with the likes of Lio Rush, Oney Lorcan, Tony Nese, and a number of others over on the now Friday night show. Getting drafted to SmackDown, I had some hope he might be utilized properly when Daniel Bryan, of all people, actually tweeted out, hey, I would love a match with Drew Gulak. I think it'd be a great match. I would love to work with that guy. No more than fucking 4 days after Gulak is drafted to Friday nights, he got buried by Braun Strowman on that show. And again, I don't use the word buried too often. I don't use it lightly. But with Drew Gulak, it was absolutely the case. For a guy that was as important as he was to that 205 Live brand for as long as he was there from the start. And granted, at the beginning there for a few years actually, he didn't really mean much. He was another goof in that division. He was the fucking PowerPoint presentation guy, which a lot of people, myself included for a time anyway, got a kick out of. And that's really all that Vince remembers from Drew Gulak, because that's all he's done on SmackDown for the past 2 weeks, is fucking showing off PowerPoint presentations before promptly losing to whoever he's in the ring with. Strowman, I thought it was dumb, but I got it, because Strowman is supposed to be this dominant asshole, this dominant, destructive force ahead of his match with Tyson Fury at Crown Jewel. Kalisto, the guy's gonna be gone within a year. Why not Apollo Crews? Why not? Even Heath Slater would have been a nicer choice than fucking Kalisto. I like Kalisto, and the Lucha House Party was very entertaining on 205 Live, but they have meant nothing. They're a fucking joke act on SmackDown on the main roster for the past year. That really just pissed me off. The Daniel Bryan stuff I did think was well done. So Daniel Bryan was being interviewed by Michael Cole, or was supposed to be being interviewed by Michael Cole, who was asking Bryan essentially, is the Yes Movement back? Because he's been a babyface now, more or less, for the past couple of weeks, right before Hell in the Cell. He hasn't done the Yes chant yet, I don't think. He has teased it. The crowd has done it. I don't think he outright has done the Yes chant. So Cole flat out asked him here, has the Yes Movement returned? And before he could answer, out came Nakamura, who Bryan pinned last week in the tag team match, in the main event of SmackDown last week, that tag team match, when it was Bryan and Reigns versus Nakamura and King Corbin. So he was interrupted by Nakamura here, and specifically Sami Zayn, who had a mic and, told Daniel Bryan, hey, I've known you for a long time now. Not only is the new Daniel Bryan, but it's also the real Daniel Bryan. I know that's who you actually are. You claim to hate liars. And listen, I'm a truth teller. That's who you actually are. Join us. Join our crusade against stupidity, as Edge once called it on SmackDown many years ago. I'm not exactly sure what their crusade is against, Sami and Nakamura, but fuck it, let's call it a crusade for the sake of it. For the hell of calling it a crusade, let's do it. He implored Daniel Bryan to join them. Bryan never said no, but he did walk off. He walked off from the ring, to some boos, just because people wanted to know, has the Yes Movement returned? Has he joined Sami Nakamura? What's going on with Daniel Bryan? And I love this. Honestly, I thought this was the best thing on the entire show. The mic work from Sami, I thought was great. The logic behind what he said was perfect. It's not like Bryan is back to being a babyface, and they're just completely forgetting about the fact that he went heel a year ago for a reason. They actually even showed that footage of Bryan's first promo as a heel a year ago. So it's not like they're ignoring the fact that, hey, he ran down the audience for being sheep and chanting yes at him for so long when he shut that shit down, in that promo. I thought that was smart. So I'm glad they're dragging this out. There's no reason to blow it off anytime soon anyway. Survivor Series isn't for another month if that's where they want to do the match. Fuck the Raw and SmackDown shit. I would just make it a standard old pay-per-view. There's no reason for it to be Raw versus SmackDown for the 4th consecutive year. It's a dumb concept. No one gets over from it. It's just a dumb idea because it doesn't mean anything, especially now that the brand split's supposedly back, even though Rey Mysterio fucking appeared on the show, even though he's a Raw superstar. Unless he's the advocate, right? Unless he's the advocate for Cain Velasquez, and even if he is, it made no sense for him to be on the show. But going back to Bryan, and the Survivor Series shit, I got way off track there, way off topic. But Bryan and Nakamura would be a great addition to that Survivor Series card. So drag this out. Don't give away an answer from Bryan just yet. Drag it out till Survivor Series. Drag it out till the TLC pay-per-view in December. And I love the idea of a Nakamura-Bryan feud over that Intercontinental Championship. Bryan actually said many years ago that he would have loved nothing more. Back in maybe early 2015, right after he won the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 31, that he would have loved nothing more than to face the IWGP Intercontinental Champion, Shinsuke Nakamura, in a cross-promotional match. Now, we would never see that because WWE, I don't think anyway, would never let their talent face another major league talent on one of their shows. We've seen that before with Evolve and Progress and, companies like that. Never a company as big as New Japan. So I doubt that that would have ever happened anyway, even if Daniel Bryan stayed healthy and didn't have to forfeit the Intercontinental Championship a few years ago, back in 2015. But he has said for a long time now that he would have loved to have faced Nakamura back then, and I'm sure he still wants that match now. So I am fully on board with this Bryan Nakamura feud over the Intercontinental Championship. Nikki Cross beat Mandy Rose. The match was fine. I honestly wasn't even really paying attention to the match itself. I was more so paying attention to Bayley on commentary, who I thought did really, really well. She explained her actions for the last couple of weeks, turning heel, her new character change, why she did what she did, the new updated attire and the different look that she's been sporting recently. I thought she did really well for a person who really was not all that great on the mic originally. Bayley, for as great of a connection she had with the crowd years ago, and as easy as she was at one point anyway to root for and rally behind as a babyface, she was never the greatest talker. Definitely not on the main roster. Maybe to a certain extent in NXT, but even then her mic skills were always kind of weak. I thought this was good. She's not the greatest talker on that roster right now, but turning heel was absolutely a step in the right direction for Bayley. So, Bayley and Nikki Cross, eventually, when it does happen, should be good. It was funny, the commentators made a note to say, when the match happens, coming up at some point, you're in a future opportunity at that SmackDown Women's Championship. Essentially saying, listen, it's not happening at Crown Jewel because we can't have women appear on the show, or at least compete on the event. So it won't be happening there, but maybe soon after, maybe next Friday on SmackDown or the week after that, or maybe they'll just wait till Survivor Series at this point. But it will be happening. It will be happening at some point in the not so distant future, I would assume. We then had Brock Lesnar attack Cain Velasquez, Rey Mysterio, and Dominick. So what happened was we were supposed to get a face-to-face between Cain and Brock in the middle of the ring. Didn't happen. Lesnar and Heyman appeared on the Titantron instead and showed that they attacked Dominic backstage. Why Rey Mysterio would bother to bring Dominic to another WWE show after what happened a fucking month ago, unless they went to his house, kidnapped Dominic, and beat the shit out of him again, then I have no idea how this makes any sense. And not only that, not only would they bother to bring him, not only would Cain being the Godfather in storyline, but why Rey would not only bother to bring him to the show, but as I think Renee Young said on Backstage, which I caught a bit of before I turned it off, she said, why would you leave him backstage alone, knowing that Brock is there? This made no sense. I thought it was a great attack. I thought it was a good angle. It was well done. The logic behind it, though, I understand you have to suspend your disbelief with wrestling. This was just completely ridiculous. Why would Ray, if this guy is such a great father, bring his son backstage and then proceed to leave him backstage wearing a Cain Velasquez shirt of all things? So Dominic gets the shit kicked out of him again, which was just glorious to see. And I love Dominic, but seeing Dominic finally get his, not even comeuppance, but just get the shit kicked out of him, there's something just so great about that. It might be perverse to say, but seeing Ray and his son just get the shit kicked out of them, even though there's nothing wrong with them as characters or as people, I don't know, it's just fun to see. Maybe that makes me the bad person. I just wanted to throw that in there. But anyway, Brock attacked Ray. When Ray went backstage, he hit an F5 on Cain on top of Dominic, which was kind of cool. Cain, or rather Ray, got launched into the side of the doctor's office, into the side wall. That was a great visual. Almost not as great, but almost as great as when Ray was chucked into the RV, the RV, when he was chucked into the side of that, like a lawn dart by Kevin Nash on Nitro 20 years ago. A long, long time ago. Into the camper that was parked outside of Nitro, the arena they were in that night. It was a great, amazing angle that is still replayed to this day because it was so good. That's kind of what this reminded me of. It was a great angle, but the logic behind it was questionable. I am looking forward to Brock and Cain. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I am a little on the edge as far as what to expect. I don't want to get my hopes up because I know Cain's only had a handful of matches so far in wrestling. I feel like they only signed the match to have a big attraction for that show, not because they had any match in mind that they thought would be a big money-making match for this event. I thought they probably thought Cain and Brock was their ticket to doing just that. That was the match they wanted to have headline the show, and it will, not because it was any grand long-term plan that they've been building to for months, So hopefully it pays off. Hopefully it's a good match. Doesn't really feel like Cain Velasquez is getting over so far as much as they probably would want him to. I guess we'll have to check back after Crown Jewel to see how that's going. And then we had the main event, Ali, Roman Reigns, and Chad Gable. I'm not going to say that fucking name. I almost did, but I'm not going to. I won't. I refuse. They beat the Intercontinental Champion Shinsuke Nakamura, Cesaro, and King Corbin in 6-man tag team action. Good match. That meant absolutely nothing because Team Hogan versus Team Flair means absolutely nothing. Like I got done talking about on Wrestle Rant Radio on Thursday when doing my Crown Jewel predictions. Like that song War, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Team Hogan versus Team Flair, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. The match is a fucking waste of time. It's really only for the enjoyment of the Saudi prince, and that's about it. But this was a good match, though. I will give them that. Overall, this was a pretty weak edition of SmackDown. Not terrible. There was some good stuff. The main event was well wrestled. Meaningless, but it was good. And the Daniel Bryan stuff I thought was solid. It was nice to see Lacey Evans get another shot with the squash match. It was what it was. It was nothing exciting, but that's more long-term. The Dominic attack, the latest assault, the latest ass-kicking of Dominic, Rey Mysterio, and Cain Velasquez, I thought was good. The overall segment could have used some work, and Rey Mysterio appearing on SmackDown as a Raw superstar continues to make no sense after they just said fucking 2 weeks ago that this brand split is back, no more wild card rule, people will be exclusive to one show or the other. What do you think the USA Network executives are thinking right now? If they even bother to watch SmackDown, they probably just don't give a shit, but seeing one of their own superstars appear on the other brand, how is this supposed to be some sort of competition when they're already breaking their own rules? Anyway, the show was not worthwhile, really at all. Maybe for the segments I mentioned, but aside from just cherry picking those, this was not a good edition of SmackDown at all. The women's match was not a waste of time. It gave Nikki a good win, but the match was as forgettable as could be. Miz TV was a total mess. The tag team match, Ziggler and Roode versus The New Day, featured bad booking, and the match was not what it could have been. The Lacey, Cameron, Connor stuff was what it was. Kalisto versus Drew Gulak, like I said earlier, a complete waste of time. It's just sad to see a guy like Drew Gulak, who was built up so well in NXT and 205 Live, be reduced to a friggin' punching bag on SmackDown. Literally a week and a half removed from his move to the blue brand. It took him all of a week to be buried on SmackDown. Just wonderful. Great job, WWE. But yeah, overall a very ho-hum edition of SmackDown. Very minimal highlights. A lot of mediocre shit, stuff I just didn't care about. That's because the show they're building up at the moment, I don't care about. I don't care about Crown Jewel. I'll be watching, I'll be reviewing it, but it's not a show I'm overly anticipating or I'm overly excited for. Hopefully it exceeds expectations, but I said the same thing about last year's Crown Jewel, and it ended up being one of the worst pay-per-views I've ever seen. So I guess we'll find out eventually. But anyway, before we close it out here, I do apologize for any noises in the background. It might have been this chair that I'm sitting in. It's kind of creaky, and it's like 1 in the morning as I record this right now on Friday night. So I may sound tired, and I am, but not that I'm bored of the show, which I actually kind of was. So maybe it's fitting that I sound tired reviewing SmackDown right now, just because the show itself was tired and boring. But anyway, guys, like I said earlier, I'm not sure if we'll make this a regular thing. I haven't for the last couple weeks. I knew I wouldn't be able to do it last week. I was away all weekend last week. The week before that, I just think I was busy with other shit that Saturday. So I'll bring this back when it's necessary for the better and more important shows, the SmackDown review here on the YouTube channel. I would like to do it every week. I would love to do it every week, but it's really more a matter of whether I can fit it into my schedule. And hopefully at some point down the road, I can start doing Wrestle Rant Radio as an entire show on Thursdays, Tuesdays, and Saturdays. Part of which, so I can review SmackDown from Fridays a lot easier. So again, that'll be coming down the pike. For now, though, I will be doing these occasional SmackDown reviews here on the channel. For anyone who cares about my 2 cents on the show in audio form, you can always check out my written reviews of SmackDown on nextdaywrestling.net. Also breaking down Raw, NXT, AEW, Dynamite, Ring of Honor, Impact, and everything else in between. At any rate, guys, thank you for checking out this review of SmackDown for October 25th, 2019. Please like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. We'll be back tomorrow, probably with some old Wrestle Rant Radio episodes being uploaded. And then Monday, I should be back with a new Network and Chill, breaking down WWE the day of, the SmackDown 20-year anniversary of the debut on Fox from a few weeks ago. So until then, guys, have a great rest of your week, and I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.